More now on the president's threat against China to impose an extra 50% tariff on goods imported into the U.S. if Beijing doesn't withdraw its 34% counter tariff. NBC's Janice Mackey-Frayer is in Beijing for us and has the latest on how China is reacting. Janice?
China responded to President Trump's threat of additional tariffs with defiance and its own threat of countermeasures to fight a trade war with the U.S. to the end. If President Trump goes through with what he has vowed, this additional 50% tariffs on all Chinese goods going into the U.S., that's 104% on anything consumers buy from China. Clothing, shoes, car parts, toys, tech, household goods, the list goes on. China is very clear in saying it will not back down from imposing countermeasures to what officials here call U.S. blackmail. They see negotiation as legitimizing President Trump's trade blitz that is hitting manufacturing hubs right across Asia. Japan, Vietnam, Cambodia, South Korea, they are all signaling they want to negotiate with the U.S., though talks, it seems, are no guarantee of getting tariff relief. Here, a spokesperson for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed there are no talks at any level between the U.S. and China over trade, saying, quote, the U.S. lacks a genuine willingness to engage in serious dialogue. Now, before the markets opened here today, the government unleashed a series of measures to help stabilize the stock market, including share buybacks by several state-owned companies. They're known here as China's national team, and that helped the markets close higher. The deadlines, though, are piling on now. All these back-to-back tariffs are set to take effect over the next 48 hours and threaten to disrupt trade, supply chains, and ultimately raise prices for U.S. consumers down the road. Janice Mackey-Frayer, NBC News, Beijing.
Joining us now is Ned Price, a former senior State Department and CIA official. Ned, when China says it will fight to the end, what could that look like?
Well, Anna, it will look like nothing good for American businesses and consumers. We've already heard from your correspondent that with these tariffs set to go into effect, it could double prices of imported goods from China. Look, Anna, there is no question that the playing field for American consumers and businesses needs to be leveled with China. But there is a smart way to do that, and then there is Trump's way of doing that. And I think it's important to distinguish those two precisely because of what we've heard from Beijing and, frankly, from Washington over the past week or so. Trump's approach has done nothing but embolden leaders in Beijing. He has really imposed these massive tariffs in a mistaken belief that tariffs are not a means to an end, in other words, leveling the playing field, but really an end unto themselves. And he's given Chinese leaders really no face-saving off-ramp. We often forget that leaders like Chinese President Xi Jinping, while may not be elected in the democratic sense, may not be worried about his next re-election, is worried about his legitimacy and legacy. And Donald Trump has really put him in a corner. And just as you said, as your correspondent said, they're girding for a fight. And ultimately, a fight between the U.S. and China on these points will only result in higher prices for American consumers, precisely the effect that Donald Trump says he was elected to counteract.
President Trump did post on Truth Social, quote, China also wants to make a deal badly, but they don't know how to get it started. We are waiting for their call. It will happen, he writes. Does China want a deal? Do you think they'll call President Trump?
Right now, there's no sign of that. And in fact, the entreaties for engagement have really been going in the other direction. It has been the White House that has been quietly signaling for weeks now that they expect a summit meeting between President Trump and President Xi to happen in the coming months. On the other hand, we've heard quite the opposite from Beijing. We've heard whispers, and those who have engaged with Chinese leaders have told us that the Chinese are not interested in engaging until they see an off-ramp. And what President Trump has done, again, to paint President Xi into a corner without giving him any sort of face-saving way out of this, has really left China uninterested in dialogue, at least at this point.
Ned Price, appreciate your insights. Thank you so much for being with us.